Friends, there is a background to the present lecture, and the background is of the situation in which women in America found themselves in the middle of the last century, the previous century, and that women were denied any kind of scope to fulfill themselves. And even though the women were married, even though the women were educated, even though they had something to feel and say, and they had the democratic right to express their opinion, what finally came to the conclusion was that the woman had been already taken off the center of society, and then she had to become a peripheral being. And as if this is what happened in the 20th century America, then is there a way out? That's the question that we can ask ourselves, and that's the question that perhaps Betty Friedan also raised and tried to address. So I request Professor Payal Nagpal to go further in the discussion and tell us as to the answer that is possible to this kind of a problem.
So in the previous lecture, we discussed what the feminine mystique really was and how American women were expected to conform to this particular idea of femininity, and its expectation being restricting the woman completely to the house and to kind of just look at her in terms of the work that she did for the family and children, but nothing that is productive about it. There is an interesting term that Friedan uses. She calls it a new life plan for women. And instead of using the word career, she says it's not simply a career, because career is often taken to mean something that is going to be antithetical in a sense to family and so on. But this requires the answers to this problem. The problem of the feminine mystique, the problem that has no name, is the problem of femininity. And she says the solution lies in a complete reorientation. And I mean, we are well aware how these ideas had, even Mary Wollstonecraft had kind of dispelled these myths earlier. So she speaks about how there is a new life plan that is required for women. The first step, she says, in that is to see housework for what it really is. Not a career, but something that must be done as quickly and efficiently as possible. She says that doing housework cannot be a woman's career, because earlier she had called it occupation housewife, that the only thing that women are trained in is to become these efficient housewives. So she says that the first step is to see what housework really is. It is not a career, and one should have what is called a functional attitude towards it, to do it quickly and efficiently as possible. So in short, one of the things that Friedan is saying is that the only way of countering this feminine mystique is of saying no to it. That to say no to this model of femininity. And, don't make a something more out of it, she says, that if you're engaged in housework, don't make it a big thing, a something more, she calls it, and do not waste time on these things. Use technology to save time, she says, but housework should be seen for what it really is. She then says that, but even if a woman does not have to work to eat, she can find identity only in work that is of value to society, work for which usually our society pays. And this is a very important point, that a lot of times an argument that is used against women's career choices, against women's desire for this new life plan, is the fact that she's supposedly happily married, so the husband is working and she need not work. So even if she addresses this problem and she says even if a woman does not have to work to eat, she can find identity only in work, which means that if women, the modern woman, is truly modern if she is able to define her identity with respect to work, and work that is productive, work that is of value to the society, for which there is, she's going to be paid for it, because housework in a sense is always unpaid labor. So here I'd again request Professor Prakash to share his views on, I think these points resonate with our context even today.
No, I get the point, and housework, I was wondering as to what exactly housework means. Does it mean only working in the kitchen, washing clothes and things like that, or housework also means that children have to be, given the homework, and they should be helped to get the homework done. Then one has to take out the children. One has to call, as guests or visitors, the parents of the other children, and having that kind of social activity. Is that also homework?
Yes. In fact, I'm glad you brought this up, because the quotation in the previous lecture that I read out about the woman who experiences this lack. So it covers everything. Housework covers this entire range, not just work in the kitchen, but even socializing with people, being nice to neighbors, attending meetings in school and so on. All this is work for the home.
So the decisive word is getting paid for the work that you do. Yes. And then that getting paid can happen only outside the home. When you go do a job, you get paid and you come back.
In fact, Betty Friedan says that even something like hobbies, she says your hobbies also can't define you. You're the only thing that can define a woman's identity is her work, and that has to be work for which she is paid.
So which means that socially productive work is that work for which you get payment, and where society is benefited. The same way as society might be benefited as a general category from the work that men do. So equality with men in terms of opportunities to work outside home. That is what will be the answer, perhaps.
Yes.
I see.
So she says that one of the most difficult things for women is this jump actually from the amateur to the professional. She says that doing work in the professional sense, that is what is required. And she says that a lot of women, she also addresses this problem of, dropping out from higher education. She says it's very difficult actually, and she actually explains, gives the entire calculation of how even when women think about kind of getting back to it, it becomes very difficult for them to do so. So, in fact, engaging in housework then is a way of evading growth. That growth pattern is then not available to women. That growth pattern is available to men. So, in a sense, we are looking at a world that is extremely unequal in terms of the way in which it deals out, opportunities to men and women. So, another...
could you elucidate growth work? What is growth work?
So, she says that when we talk about identity, it's not only about assigning a name or a sense of self, but you also go beyond it, because the self then has to evolve, it has to grow, and that can only happen when the woman makes this transition from an amateur to becoming a professional, to kind of engaging in this valuable, productive work.
The obvious example would be that when you are teaching your children and helping them in homework, that is housework. But when you go out and teach in a school, yes. And when you are in touch with the school authorities, with the government agencies that are associated with the school and all those things, then your mind expands to meet the requirements of the society as a whole.
In fact, it's such a good example that you've given, because doing this, you are already out of the, your confinement at home, and you're already in the domain of society, in the domain of culture, in the domain of politics, everywhere. The woman, in a sense, gets to experience what is happening in the outer world, whereas that experience is completely denied, because her work is kind of predefined, preset, which is why it's a very linear sort of a performance that she engages in.
Does she also talk about women working for home maintenance outside their own home and getting paid for it?
She doesn't call it specifically that, but she says any work that is of value to society and work for which a woman is paid. She says that is the work that she needs to engage in. And what I do like is this thing about, because engaging in certain kinds of activities within the household at times gives the woman the illusion that she's doing productive work, but she says no, it is not productive work. Your hobbies, you might be painting, you might be doing something else, but that is not productive work. In fact, another very interesting word that Friedan uses and dwells on it quite a bit is the word commitment. She says that women need to be committed to an art or science or politics.
Please elucidate this.
Yes.
This is a good phrase to define
Yes.
the idea.
So she says that women need to be committed, and this commitment again is not something that is to be executed within the household. This commitment to an art or science or politics is an extension of the woman's self, her being, and her interaction with the society. It's her extension into the society. She's in a sense stretching her arms and she's engaging with the different aspects of society. And she says this, she says that this kind of a life plan where a woman is looking at a socially productive identity, where a woman is looking at a growth pattern, a woman is looking at commitment, she says this kind of a life pattern is totally forbidden by the feminine mystique, because the feminine mystique only wants a woman to conform to a certain kind of physical appearance, to a certain kind of performance, and everything about this particular model is already predetermined and it's not a flexible model. So she says that this needs to be completely done away with. And she says the picture of the happy wife doing creative work at home, she says, is a delusion. Women are often told that in working they are rejecting the family. She also addresses this problem, and in fact she says that at times women also have to kind of deal with a lot of other women who might be judgmental about them. She says that women are often told that in working they are rejecting the family, and she gives very day-to-day life examples. For instance, a woman is at work and something goes wrong at home, and something goes wrong with the child. Who is to be blamed? It is the woman who is going to be blamed. She actually gives this example. So she says that women should not fall for these things, and they need to kind of rethink about such assumptions that are made that things have gone wrong because the women are outside and they are working, and such things need to be totally rejected. So this, and she says that this can only be done when women also realize that the kind of performance that they are conforming to is a complete delusion. And with this, she actually brings us to the final point here, which is that of education. She says the key, to the trap then is education. The feminine mystique has made higher education for women seem suspect, unnecessary, and even dangerous. But I think education, and only education, has saved and can continue to save American women from the greater dangers of the feminine mystique. So, in a sense, she, by the end of the book, Friedan has completely reversed this. Not only has she dispelled the idea of the feminine mystique, but she has exposed it as something that is extremely dangerous for the women. And she says that if women have to move outside of this, the only answer lies in education. And she says, and she also, this very quotation, she explains how higher education, especially, a certain amount of education is given to women, but the moment they want to engage in higher education, it is made to seem as, it's almost as if women are selfish in having ambitions. Women are selfish in aspiring for higher education. So she says it is made to seem suspect, unnecessary, and she calls it, and she says that at times even dangerous. But she says that if there is an answer, then this answer lies only in education. So, the commitment of women to the world outside is very important. But this decline and this doing away of this, social commitment in women is a doing, she's saying it's a result of the feminine mystique. She calls it the housewife trap. And again, as we pointed out, the housewife doesn't mean simply doing housework, but also, taking care of the children and engaging with the social image of the family. So, the problem that has no name, which is to keep the American women from growing to their full capacities. So, that's another important point, that the potential that the women have is something that is totally curbed and totally done away with. So, the American, the mystique then prevents the American women. And of course, I'm using the word American women here because Betty Friedan's work is based on her interactions with the American women. But this can be said of women at large at that point of time. And I think a lot of it will resonate with, one's lives here today. So, And all this, she says, it takes, she says, if you're really looking at the progress of the country, and here's again another important point, she says the progress of the country cannot be possible if the women are not progressing, if the women are not socially productive. So she says that, this kind of an expectation and this kind of a restriction takes its toll, in a sense, on the physical and the emotional well-being, she says, of the country, and she says the answers do not lie in medicine and psychotherapy and so on. She says the answer lies in social change, and this social change is possible only with a complete reorientation of the way women think and the way they are expected to behave.
Reorientation seems to be the key word of the entire argument that she gives. And reorientation means that you have to look at society from a different angle, the angle that women are equal with men, and they have to given scope to fulfill themselves as women unto themselves. In all this, there is some kind of, and I'm raising this question for your consideration. In all this, somehow the reference to matrimony is perhaps indirect but not direct, because women are defined generally in terms of their matrimony, where they have to think of a home to run. And if there are single women, if they are free women, if they are independent women, and if they are working outside, then perhaps the walls of matrimony would weaken and perhaps finally crumble. What do you say?
This is something that came to my mind, especially towards the end of the book, where she says that women need to integrate roles, and Friedan talks about how the roles can be integrated in the sense the working woman and integrating it with marriage and even being single. But this integration actually is complex, and as you pointed out, that actually I think she's probably not spelling it out like that, but throughout the book it's a scathing attack on matrimony and the fact that matrimony has completely denied women their identity. It's totally, literally swallowed up their existence. So that is very clearly indicated. But when it comes to their life plan, she's probably, I guess it's 1960s, though 1960s were also very, revolutionary in their own way. But I think, she's kind of urging women that even when they think about matrimony, the one thing that they should not give up. She's taking a more practical approach here and saying that the one thing they should never give up is their work. So if their identity is there, it is to be vis-a-vis that. But she's also kind of, in the book, spoken to a lot of women who are outside of matrimony. And she explains how they're completely happy women, and they are the ones who are able to kind of, do all these things, evolve their identity, display these growth patterns, and they are truly productive in that sense. But matrimony is completely antithetical to, the development of women. But she's also, I think, analyzing a society where with, the marriage rate dropping, with women having, all of them at that point of time, most women, within matrimony were having 4 or 5 children. So she's addressing all these problems, and which is why, she's laying great emphasis on education.
Actually, I was thinking of the 1970s, 80s, and the rise of revolt among women particularly, and they started playing a political role. They started, changing the political fate of America. Yes. And they went very pro-Democrats and against the Republicans in that sense. Yeah. So and now their presence is very clearly felt in the political spectrum. So all this shows that women have already decided to critique matrimony to the extent that they can do without it. And there is a whole lot of women now. Their number is growing, as you also indicated. Their dropouts and they bother about their careers and they play a social role, and matrimony is in fact denied even in the lesbian and other relationships. So all that is happening in America, and I think this book comes at a time when things will go in a certain direction and ensure the kind of reorientation that you are talking about.
I completely agree, and I think her own, Betty Friedan's own argument is that there is nothing like the happy housewife. There is nothing like, if anything, matrimony has probably taken everything away from the woman. And this was quite, at the time when it came out, it was quite an explosive book, because people were, this was one aspect that had not really speaking been talked about. So coming back to the point of education, she says that educators at every women's college, at every university, junior college and community college must see to it that women make a lifetime commitment. She says, call it a life plan, call it a vocation, call it a life purpose, if that dirty word career has too many celibate connotations. She says, call it what you want, but ensure that women make a lifetime commitment to a field of thought. What is the commitment to? The commitment is to a field of thought, to work of serious importance to society. It is essential, above all, for educators themselves to say no to the feminine mystique and face the fact that the only point in educating women is to educate them to the limit of their ability. So, to realize their full potential in a sense. So, in this sense, the very fact, and I think the two things, the point that is raised about matrimony, I think they go hand in hand, that the moment women are able to kind of extend themselves in this way, it means a complete dissolution and a complete crumbling of structures like the institution of marriage. And that is what is really speaking required, because the feminine mystique in that sense is totally rooted within this idea of the institution of marriage, so to say. So, and again, reiterating the point that women don't need these courses in marriage. They need to be trained in science. They need to be educated. And this new life plan, she of course, as I said, that I guess because she's addressing the women of the late 50s, she says that their new life plan has to combine, if at all they think about motherhood and marriage, it has to combine with their lifelong commitment to society, which she sees that only education can provide. So she says we don't know what women's intelligence can contribute, and the time, she says, is at hand when we, really speaking, see that women are able to assert themselves, and this voice within them that's haunting them and is telling them that they are experiencing this lack. She says that is now something that needs to be addressed in a very serious manner. So, this book came as a shock to quite a few people, and even today, I think this particular structure, this mold, this model of the feminine woman is something that continues, and I think the book and Betty Friedan's argument remains relevant, because I think this myth of femininity, really speaking, needs to be dispelled.
Overall, what does this woman, what does this thinker tell us? Can you just make a statement as a kind of conclusion to the discussion?
Yes, I think Betty Friedan offers a very scathing critique of women's relationship with matrimony, and she feels that that needs to be done away with, and women should be socially productive workers. They should be educated, they should have access to higher education, and they should be able to commit themselves to the society and to a life plan that involves work.
So friends, Professor Payal Nagpal has concluded the lecture by focusing upon the idea of commitment that is necessary for the woman. She is to be committed to thinking, committed to understanding the society in which she lives, committed to seeing her own significance, seeing her own value as a kind of contribution to society, and all other things are secondary. And if this commitment is properly fulfilled, if this commitment is properly realized, then of course women can think for a brighter future. So this to me also appears to be the kind of answer that Betty Friedan is giving. And thanks Professor Payal Nagpal, and the viewers, you should also go into these questions of giving a kind of importance to women in terms of commitment. Let them be committed people, committed to thinking, committed to a higher sense of value, and committed to society in the genuine sense of the term. Thank you.